Graham, let's come back to you and talk about this income tax increase of 1%. Firstly, it's not a tax on the rich like many were expecting. And explain how it will work, because he said that it's an up, but in some respects it's relief for taxpayers in certain brackets.
Well, there are kind of two elements to it. One is just the straight 1% increase, which pretty much applies mainly across the board. But then there's the bracket creep adjustment that kicks in to sort of counter that, which is a relief for taxpayers. So if you earn 450,000 Rand a year or less, you're actually in a better position. If you earn more than 450,000 Rand, you're in a worse position now.
Okay, so it sounds like it's very fair, but it is actually still progressive. That's the tax policy, the trend that we followed, where the rich bear a greater burden. Was this the right move, Tabi?
I think that it is the right move, but the risk here is that you're taxing the very people who contribute the most to tax. And so, for instance, if are you
talking about the middle, the swath?
Exactly. But if you earn, so the tax increase, the income tax just basically means that if you're earning about 200,000 Rand a year, your tax increases by 21 Rands per month. But if you earn 1.5 million Rand a year, you have a 1,105 Rand increase per month, which is quite steep.
Okay, so the burden is
on the higher end of the South African population, and the South African population that contributes the most towards taxes.
If we look at it overall, I'd like a comment from both of you. You just look at where the tax is coming from. Increasingly, more and more coming from individuals, less coming from businesses. Which many would say is the growth engine, the employers. How did we get into this situation, and is it sustainable, starting with you?
I expected actually more increases on corporate taxes rather than the burden falling on consumers, especially given that consumers are faced with headwinds. But the argument has always been that that will deter investment and therefore growth. So I think it's a difficult balancing act. To say it's fair, I think that the burden should have fallen more on corporate tax than consumers.
But that would have been dangerous for corporates.
Yeah, I think I'm relieved that there was no corporate tax increase, to be honest. I think with the need for investment in South Africa, I think that would have been pretty damaging. I think with the dividend withholding tax that came in a few years ago, sort of on top of that, I was quite pleased to see that there wasn't a corporate tax increase. But the one thing that was quite positive around corporate tax, if you will, is the Davis proposals that came through on small and medium-sized enterprises, because that is the one bit of the budget that actually spoke a little bit to a growth agenda. The rest of it was more...
You're talking about this threshold, so you won't pay tax.
Correct.
If you're a micro business making less than 300,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I'm also so glad, because we've heard small businesses complain for years and years and years about the regulation, about the taxes, and they are this growth engine. Are we doing enough for small business?
We're not, and I haven't seen. We have this new department, and we're yet to see much from it. The small business ministry. And hopefully this year.
I guess she could say she's had that year of the finance minister.
True, and also I guess she spent the past couple of months trying to set up the department. But there's a lot that needs to be done in promoting small and medium-sized enterprises. And just like I think in the US, South Africa should be growing through small and medium-sized enterprises. These are the companies, or at least the sector that is going to employ more people than the bigger firms, for instance, and generate more growth. And also we need to start looking at the informal sector as well.
He unfortunately downgraded our growth projection again.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Our economy is in dismal shape, and was this the right budget for this economy?
My forecast for this year is 2.1%, so he's in more or less in line with my forecast than the 2.5% that they had at the medium-term budget in October. I think it's a true reflection of the economy. I think there's a great risk to economic growth. As I mentioned earlier, we have electricity constraints which is going to suppress a lot of productivity and is the biggest risk to growth. Next year, growth at 2.45% is still very weak. And the following year 3% is also quite weak. So we are still muddling along as an economy, and we're still looking for where growth will come from. And I think that
clawing,
clawing, and it really has to come from, as we said earlier, small and medium-sized enterprises growing. We need to find ways in which our manufacturing and mining sectors can produce more and become more productive and employ more, given the disruptions in the electricity supply. There's a lot of money being thrown in education. Again, money was thrown in education, and I think that the government in the past has always thrown money at this problem without solving it. I don't think money needs to be thrown in education. I think that we need to look at why education is not providing the right skills.
Education takes the lion's share.
Exactly.
We have to stop it there. Tubby from Renaissance, Graham from EY. Let's cross to the steps again and see who Abra is with.